Thank you for joining Sree's Sunday New York Times Read Along. As you can tell, we have a very special guest with us today, my daughter, Emily Parik. She's just sitting in with us for the first little bit. Good morning, Emily. I want to give a special shout out to everyone watching the show on the video archive, either on Facebook or LinkedIn. As you know, we go live every Sunday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And whether Sree is hosting or whether I'm hosting, if he's not available, we often have really special guests, not usually as special as Emily, but we often have guests from the New York Times, authors, people from the field of entertainment, and of course we look at the news. We look at the New York Times. And so we encourage everyone to share this stream, whether it's live or later, and let us know where you're watching from. We have Jonathan Borstein has already checked in from the East Village. Jonathan, thank you always for joining us. And what I wanted to let you know just a little bit about our guest, Kate Byrne. Kate Byrne is the president of Intentional Media and has done some incredible work looking at how to make sure women get ahead in the corporate world, looking at the power of purpose for corporate partners, and encouraging them to do more as opposed to just focusing on the bottom line. So Emily, let's see who else is joining us before we bring Sree on. We have our friend from Center Reach, Long Island, Rohadian Timoteo Sastro Guardio. I hope I pronounced that right. We have Rao Madhukuri from Warsaw, Poland. From Poland, yeah. And Diane Stefani is joining us from Margate, New Jersey. And she says, morning, Neil and Emily. And Diane, thank you for bringing on, helping us introduce us to Kate Byrne, who will be joining us later. We have Geraldine Visco, who's always joins us from the gym where she goes swimming before the show. Pradnya, who's usually in Silver Spring, is in the departures terminal at LAX. Marianne Chitharyaram loves the imitation of me talking. Thank you. And Ambassador Srinivasan, Shree's father, is joining us as well from Kerala. So on that note, I think it's a good time to bring Sree on, don't you think, Emily? Should we have Sree join the show? But they want to watch her see your face because your face is cute. So let's show your face, and we'll bring on our host, Sree Srinivasan. Sree, how are you?
I'm great, and hello, Emily. How are you?
What do you see, Emily? Do you see Sree?
No.
Sree, what are you showing us?
Yes, we're showing you the skyline of Manhattan. You can see part of the skyline there. You're looking at from the Upper West Side onto Midtown, and then all the way in the distance is the New World Trade Center. And over here is New Jersey, and there's the Hudson River. And if I swing around here, you can see a little bit of Central Park. And this is right here on 96th Street on the Upper West Side. Emily, great to see you. Neil, great to see you. Paula is in Tallahassee, one of our two producers who works with Neil. Neil's our executive producer outside Washington. Paula is in Tallahassee. And Steve Taylor is all the way in Philly, which is South New Jersey. And I mean, it's past Southern New Jersey. You can, it's great to have everybody here with us. Prabodh is watching us from Riverdale, New York, which is around over there. Let me see if I can show you the George Washington Bridge. We'll just swing over there, and you can see a little bit of the bridge in the distance right over there. So thank you very much for joining us, everyone, from around the world. And I'm delighted my parents are here and other folks also. And I just want to thank everybody for their time and their attention. And please hit share right now and get this out into the world. Anybody who likes the news, who's interested in the news, should be joining us. We have a fabulous guest and also lots of news to talk about. Tara is here. She's home early from her walk this time. And she is here and ready to party and participate. 1 second. We got her a little new toy here. So that she can be seen better at night. And Tara says hi to Emily.
Emily, can you say hi to Tara?
All right, we're
Sree,
just going to go in. It's a little, sorry?
Isn't there something about not doing live shows with kids or dogs?
That's right.
But
That's right. Those
yet we're
famous
doing
words
it
that
anyway.
don't do show business with those folks, but here we are. And I wanted to just start before we bring in our guest, just sit down here and show you the full range of newspapers. I mean, a wonderful range of things that we're going to be looking at today. We have the travel section. You did a fantastic conversation with the travel editor of the New York Times at her home in January, which was, one of the highlights of our show. The Sunday Style section. We also have the kids section here, and it's always fun to see that. We have business. We have Sunday review about the billionaire election. Yep, with lots to talk about that. Sports, and we have the learning section, book review. We also have, of course, the front page, the arts and leisure. This is the interview that got a lot of attention this week already. Ben Affleck has plenty of work, but even more regrets. The metropolitan section and real estate. But while you have Emily, I wanted to show everyone something from yesterday that I went to. There's now going to be a show on Disney called Mira, Royal Detective.
Oh.
And it's about a cartoon. It's a cartoon on Disney Junior and on the Disney Channel about a little Indian girl set in India who is the royal detective in a kingdom, in a fairy tale kingdom. And this is Mira. And these are her friends Miku and Chiku, and this is the elephant, and you get the idea. This is her magnifying glass, and they had a world premiere screening yesterday, and we got to attend. And here are the henna tattoos they gave out, the stickers, even the cocktail napkins.
So it's
which
not.
Along with,
sorry, Sree, it's not on TV yet. It was just a premiere.
No, yeah, it's a premiere. It'll be on very soon in March. It will be on. And one of the delightful things for us is that our friend Kavi Ladnier's daughter is the lead. Leela Ladnier is Mira, the royal detective.
Wow.
And so I'm going to save these stickers for Emily. So when she comes out to New York, or Neil comes out to New York, we'll give these to her. And they had lassi and samosas and all kinds of cool stuff at the premiere. It's a really fun show. In addition to having Leela there, some of the famous voices who are on the show, including Cal Penn and Asif Mandvi and Aparna Nacherla, were all there as well. So it was really fun to see all the celebs come out. And they also gave out these cute blankets, and Emily's going to get this blanket as well. So that's going to be fun. And to see an Indian character like that for these kids who are there, it's a show aimed for boys and girls 2 to 7.
Bless you.
So that's a perfect age for Emily to see as well. So watch for that on Disney and Disney Junior coming soon.
Thank you, Sree. Before we go, I'm going to tee up a question from your father. Anything about the president's visit to India in the news?
We'll see. We'll open the paper. Yeah, we'll open the paper inside and see. One of the things that's going to be interesting is how the press conference goes when it happens between President Trump and Prime Minister Modi. And there have been several articles written as previews to this. And I have to see the timeline. When is he exactly on the ground in India?
Sure.
I know it's his first trip as president, but I somewhere read it was his first trip ever. But it would be interesting to see if he's been before in any other capacity. And also just want to say hi to everyone who's watching, who's going to be joining us at Social Media Weekend, which is coming up less than a month. And it's in downtown Manhattan at Pace University, our partners there. And we're going to have all day Saturday, March 21st, a chance to learn everything about social, digital, and mobile media. And you're showing very kindly what it used to. Oops, if we can go back just to show a session from the last Social Media Weekend. This is part of the crowd that was there, and you can see Ali Velshi from CNN at the time, and now, he was at Al Jazeera at the time. Now he's an anchor on MSNBC. You also see Jeff Jarvis there, the great digital educationist. You see Craig from Craigslist there, and then you see many of our folks who helped make this, make Social Media Weekend, including our executive producer of Social Media Weekend. I see Linda Bernstein, and one of the founders of Social Media Weekend. I see Liz Barad. Right. Let's go over a couple of pages just to show folks. We're going to have 30 plus world-class speakers, and we're going to have consultations with our social media doctors, professional headshots all thrown in. It's all just $149 if you buy your tickets today. It goes up by $50 tomorrow or at midnight tonight. So please, if you have any friends in the world who would benefit from social and digital media training, this is a chance to do it at a very good price. We also have arranged a block of hotel rooms right next to Pace in downtown Manhattan. On the next page, we will show you, let's just go over. Let's see, these are some of the folks who have talked about the work I do, but including Walt Mossberg, the greatest technology journalist of our times, and Lauren Mack and Gianni Riotta, who attended and have participated. And Gianni is actually speaking this time on the elections and digital media. And he says it's the best experience you can legally enjoy. I like that. And we're just going to have a fabulous time. Our previous feature speakers, you can see some of them there, including April Rain, the founder of Oscar So White, and Helen Clark, the former Prime Minister of New Zealand and head of the UN United Nations Development Program, Craig Newmark from Craigslist. And this time we are so excited to tell you that we have Sheryl Wu Dunn and Nick Kristof, husband and wife, who won the Pulitzer Prize. And they have a brand new book called Tightrope: Americans Reaching for Hope, about the inequality situation in the United States. And they use digital and social in such brilliant ways. So Friday, it starts with a meetup at two big museums in New York, including the Met, where we're going to show you how to use digital from the digital team there. And we're going to learn a little bit of Instagram. We have a Friday night opening party at our sponsors Muck Rack, which is going to be fabulous, about 6 to 9. And then all day Saturday, workshops, panels, networking, headshots, social media doctors. And then my premiere of my new keynote session about how to navigate the noise in 2020 and thrive in this era. So we are looking for sponsors. If you know any business that would benefit from getting their message out in front of 300 fabulous tech enthusiasts and tech experts, please let us know. Just ping me, Sree at Sree.net, SREE at SRE.net. We can send you a brochure, a flyer, anything you need. And please get your tickets because it expires. The $149 price expires tonight. And you certainly know people who would benefit from attending. So thanks very much. And Neil will be there. Neil, what are you doing at Social Media Weekend?
I'm actually going to be running a panel on live streaming.
Yeah, you're now our expert on live streaming. You look at this. We used to do this only on Facebook, and now we are live on LinkedIn and Facebook. And we're also, the recording goes on YouTube. So
Absolutely.
It's fantastic that you're doing this. And StreamYard is the tool we're using for this.
Yep.
It's like magic. You can bring in 6 people. And, you know, if this was Fox, we could be yelling at each other really loudly. But instead, we're trying to bring you information and knowledge. And that's what's terrific. My goal in everything we do is to make it as useful and helpful as possible. And if we had a sub motto for our conference, it's to make it the most useful tool, a useful conference that you have been to. So please tell your friends. smwknd.com has the details, or you can look at the links that have been posted online, or it's pinned to the top of my Twitter feed. I'm at Sree on Twitter, SreeNet on Instagram. Neil Parekh, our executive producer, is at Neil Parekh. So do follow him, and let's get to the news.
Absolutely.
And thank you very much. And you'll bring Kate on in a minute. I'm already getting lots of people saying they want to say hi to Kate, people who know her, including Bill Sobel says hi. And Stefan says, good morning. to Emily, look at all those goodies that Uncle Sree got for you. Yes, absolutely.
Exactly.
Delighted to share those. And Jonathan says, shall be at Social Media Weekend. It's right in the middle of the Flamenco Festival. Hey, let's combine those. And maybe Saturday night, Jonathan, people looking for something to do can go to the Flamenco Festival after we have, the after party drinks. That'll be from 6 to 7. So after that, we're all ready for flamenco time.
Absolutely.
So thanks very much. Okay, let's get going.
I'll step out, Sree, and I'll come back at the end of the show to talk about next week's guest.
Sure, and
Great.
I'll look at the front page, and then you'll bring Kate in.
Exactly.
All right. Thanks very much. Carla says, I've attended Sree's Social Media Weekend a number of times. It's excellent. Well worth the price of admission. So sweet, Carla. Thank you very much. Carla, among other things, helps us with this read along and has gotten us several terrific guests, including just in the last 2 weeks, we got to interview the dog hugger. It was just a wonderful conversation. I have Corey Cohen with us. He was terrific. And if you need any help with your dog, you've got to watch this show. It was fabulous. So do find it in our archives very easily. And Joanne Flynn Black says, as a previous attendee, it's totally worth it. Just do it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Please share the social media weekend stuff, but also share the read along right now. All right. On the front page, look at this. In a show of might, Sanders wins Nevada. The clear front runner of the primary pack is now Senator Bernie Sanders, and he had a big rally in Texas on Saturday. A broad block brings a revolution to life. Preview of nomination path for Sanders. And it says here that he is the Teflon candidate, is sure to face a new level of scrutiny now that he is the front runner. In fact, that's one of the things many of the commentators mentioned, how surprised they were that everybody went after Mayor Bloomberg, even though he was not even on the ballot in Nevada. So it was very interesting, and therefore that cleared a pathway for Bernie Sanders to win in Nevada, and now he is the front runner. So now we'll see. Now that term Teflon Don is something that people have used to talk about Donald Trump, about how nothing phases him, nothing affects him. You could have every moment something terrible that he said, does, something uncovered about him, and he still gets to move forward. So we'll see if Teflon Bernie works going forward. Here's a fascinating story about an ultra-wealthy feud between two neighbors and a rape case in idyllic Cay in the Bahamas. It devolves into a long, expensive, and ugly war. And just in a lot of these kinds of stories, it becomes about these two men who are fighting with each other over beach noise and things like that. But teenage girls are among the victims alleged in the story. So please do take a look at that. And Lapsus turned a luxury cruise into a floating Petri dish at sea. This is about the terrible problems among the 2,600 passengers on the Diamond Princess, the ship that was outside Japan. I saw a headline yesterday how dozens of Americans were allowed to fly home, even against doctors' orders. So we are still at the beginning of this coronavirus story. I hope it goes away, but I really worry about how much noise there is about all the various problems, both in China and elsewhere, that are happening. Seeking chaos, Moscow places its bets in the U.S. And you've seen that Moscow is supporting President Trump and also supporting Bernie Sanders. And I believe they're doing that because they want to set up Sanders versus Trump, which will be the most divisive battle. And also there's a good chance that as a result of all that, that there'll be so much chaos. So it'd be interesting to see what happens. Turmoil at sea as the disloyal are, I'm not saying turmoil at sea, turmoil at top as the disloyal are swept out. And that's what's happening. We now have someone in charge of our intelligence that has no background in intelligence and is a Trump loyalist, an ultimate Trump loyalist. But like a lot of Trump loyalists, it turns out he was a Trump critic. So just like our very visible supporter of the president, Senator Graham, was a big critic of the president. Ambassador Grinnell was a big critic of the president also during the campaign, but now loves him, and Trump has forgotten him, his criticisms as well. So the Teflon Don goes kind of in both directions. He's willing to forgive people if they turn loyal. So it's, what have you done for me lately? Look at this in the video section of the New York Times. You can do a 6-minute workout, 3 short videos from nytimes.well. So if you're interested in working on your health in a short time, you can do that. And the Times coronavirus live briefing has included reports from Wuhan, a city on lockdown, 24-hour reporting delay. All right, let's bring in our guest so that she can join us, and we'll have her react to some of the stories that we've already had on the front page, and then just get in there and talk to Kate Byrne.
Good morning, everybody. It's really a
Hello.
treat to get. Yeah.
Hi, Kate.
Hey.
Hi, Kate. How are you? Where are you, Kate?
Where am I? Where in the world is Kate? Today, I am sitting here at the Charles F. Knight Executive Education Center at St. Louis, WashU, St. Louis, at the Olin School of Business.
Very cool. And you were able to get them to open up that early, and that's great.
I'm actually staying here. I came to meet up with my husband, John, who was doing a session earlier last week, and our daughter is here. She's a junior at WashU. So I'm actually doing this as a touch point on my way to DC next week, where I'm attending something for the Aspen Institute and Nexus. So.
Yeah, terrific. And by the way, we should tell folks about your husband, who is, I've been a fan of his work for decades, and he has been one of the most influential business journalists of our time.
Well, thank you. And he feels very much the same about you. He's really excited, truly. So John and I actually met when we were at Fast Company, but we worked at BusinessWeek before. And he now he was executive editor and editor-in-chief of BusinessWeek.com, wrote more cover stories than anyone, 58 across all of the business journals, and now runs poetsandquants.com to help.
Yeah, Poets and Quants is a fabulous website and business. You folks should check it out. And let's meet Kate. Let's have Kate talk a little bit, if you will, about your work and your story. You hinted at a few of the things already, but tell us your story.
Sure. So I'm the president of what we call a purpose-driven platform that's known as Intentional Media. It was started a couple of years ago by the two founders, Bob Caruso and John Morris. And we literally are increasing and creating an environment where everybody involved in the impact space, so that can be the impact investor, the impact entrepreneur, or the impact executive, which we're now seeing many corporates becoming, so that we can help empower them and educate them so that they can run their businesses better, manage their money better, and essentially live their lives better, so that everyone can thrive. And we do it through media property. We've got experiential, so we've got a number of events. We own SOCAP, world's longest running and biggest impact investing event. And then we've got Total Impact, which talks to the traditional financial crew, of which we had a story there talking about Morgan Stanley. We'll get to that a little bit later, and how they're taking over E-Trade. And then we've also got Conscious Company Media. And Conscious Company is really helping, again, celebrate those entrepreneurs and those the impact executive who's trying to run their business better. There were 2 key conversations that we felt as the pioneers in the space we needed to address. One is our Spectrum event, which is racial equity, and how can we get more funding to founders of color. And then women. And that is, as we know, that's one of my passions. It always has been. I started in the advertising business. That might be one reason why. Often the one female voice in the room. And then moved over to media, where I held executive positions at Inc., Fast Company, and then BusinessWeek. And I've just been and the Tides Foundation. And it was when I was at Fast Company, I recognized, gosh, we created the Social Capitalist Awards back in 2004. And it was such a no-brainer. Why the heck aren't we why isn't the world operating this way? And so for the last 15 years of my career, I've devoted to becoming something of a translator and a seed planter, if you will, talking about and demonstrating and hopefully helping people educate and equip them on how they can make impact at any age, even starting with Emily.
That's fabulous. The term impact investing may be new to some people who are watching. And also, if you can talk a little bit about, there's the double bottom line, triple bottom line. What do all those words mean?
So there was a time, and the piece that I'm referring to really is the triple bottom line. So that's where, when you're making an investment, you're supporting a business or a fund that has a group of businesses that is all focused on doing well for the planet and the people. And then that's how you're deriving a profit that is not extractive. I see that, you had a little bit later, we'll talk about Anand's piece, but very much about you're doing well by doing good. And many people right now, or I should say historically, have been a little risk adverse because, especially coming out where I'm from in California and Silicon Valley, I think so many people there's a real consequence we're beginning to see with the consequence of convenience and the speed within which we expect our returns. And that is really damaging all of our resources, be it our people in terms of our employees, definitely our resources, because, natural resources are not fine. I mean, they're finite, they're not infinite. And we've been acting counter to that. So it's really, how can people start really, choosing with their wallet, what they purchase, how they invest, with their feet, where they work, what companies they support. And then finally, we're talking about Teflon Bernie, with their vote. Less about vote. We don't get really into the politics, but those are three ways that I think people can make some definite impact.
And the difference between double and triple bottom line? So
triple is all three, right? It's people, planet, profit. And double bottom line is profit, and usually just people.
Right. And so I think the idea of the triple is something that a lot of people can get behind. But the problem is that most, you're doing this great work, but most people are focused on just the first bottom line, and the bottom line is the bottom line. So how do you get people to think more broadly and understand that doing good and doing well can go together?
Is in fact possible. You know what it is, Sree? It's really education and demonstrating how there are certain choices that one can make in terms of certain companies. There are a number of new business models, right? So like Tom's and Warby Parker and such, who are donating, or not donating, but sharing, even Salesforce, a portion of their profits to specific causes and giving back to the communities around them. And so really taking a look at the fact, and there's research now that demonstrates in the long run, purpose-driven portfolios actually perform better.
Wow.
It takes a little bit.
Right.
That's that piece of what we call patient capital.
Mm-hmm.
And so realizing, okay, so often if I'm going to go in and out really quickly and expect somebody to turn around a company from 0 to 18 months, I have to see this hockey stick growth that we've gotten so addicted to, the kind of the money crack pipe, if you will. They're not sustainable businesses, right? Yeah. And I think we're in an interesting time right now where in many ways it mirrors the .com days. And I was a part of that when I worked at the Industry Standard.
Right. Oh my God. I haven't thought of those folks in a while. You guys did a lot of fabulous work, and the timing was all weird for that. But
real estate was what did us in, to be honest with you. I did want to say there is a brief video. So if we could, I got so excited in the conversation. I'd love to just share it.
Sure, please.
Great.
All right, let's roll the videotape.
There we go, Neil. I can do an experiential version of it.
Yeah. Interpretive dance version.
Yes, exactly.
And we can come back to the video if you're having trouble. Neil will tell us if we're having trouble. We can just continue. Otherwise, we'll come back to the video. Okay, here we go. Folks, hit share right now. Tag your friends. Anyone who should be watching this, please have them join us right now. And here we are with a Vimeo video. Okay, maybe we'll come back to that. Neil will tell me when he's ready, and we'll come back. But let me ask you, Kate.
Sure.
Well, okay, we're going to try again. Nice, very cool. It really captures a lot of what you're doing. And by the way, I should tell you, I love the word intentional because I use intentionality a lot in my work, where we say that a lot of the things around being present and using social and digital media properly is about intentionality of purpose. Talk about the name and how you came up with it.
So, you know, when we first started, we were looking for a word that captured, purpose and mindfulness and consciousness. Some of those are a little triggering, right? So while I love the word conscious, it assumes then if you're not woke or conscious, then you're not, right? But intentional, to your point, who doesn't want to be intentional? And it applies to really slowing down and being thoughtful to how you're living, how you're consuming, how you're investing, how you're running your business. And so we thought it was so fitting because then it enables us to broaden the conversation beyond just and take on the greater definition of capital.
Yeah.
So many people, when we talk about capital, right, we think money. But Sree, it's social capital, so greater capital. It's your network. It's your social media capital. There's so many different resources of this. And so we just decided, and we did some, testing of people. It's a great name because everybody can be intentional.
Yeah, I love it. Even in parenting, I think it matters more to be, to give your child 2 hours of intentional time where you're present and engaged versus giving 4 hours where you're on your phone half the time. Much better to give those intentional hours. So let's take a look at the news and let's talk about it. You've been in around the news media for so long. What is your relationship with print? As I switch over the camera here, what is your relationship with print and anything with the New York Times?
Yeah, so I'll start with print very briefly. Worked at Inc. and as I mentioned earlier, BusinessWeek and Fast Company. So started with magazines, and then also helped each of those brands create a new magazine. It was Inc. Technology, BusinessWeek Small Business Edition, and then Fast Company. We really focused on specific areas. New York Times. This I used to compete, right, because I was always the rainmaker, the business revenue generator, but with great fondness. And I personally, and I've got it, and just going through this issue in particular, the craftsmanship that this team delivers, not just this Sunday, but every single day of the week. And now I just think such great creativity that you display and how to enhance a reader's experience. I think there were some, really terrific and helpful graphics that are online. There's some fabulous detailed charts that are in the paper itself. And as I said on social media myself, this New York Times Magazine, I devoured it.
Yeah.
So really well done. But it's a favorite for my husband and I every Sunday. And I have to say, I've just done the Cliff Notes in the mornings, but I'm diving back in. I'm going to go back. I'm going all in. I'm going to be intentional with my New York Times reading now.
Nice. So thank you. And I would say that I hear that from a lot of people who are competing with the Times, but they have that kind of fondness for what it means. And even as a stand-in for the entire industry, the fact that we still have this going on in a digital age tells you something about the readers, about the company, about the future of media that's still hopeful in a way where every day we hear the problems, especially on the local newspapers, the regional newspapers, the McClatchy bankruptcy. When you hear all of that, it's stomach turning. But there's a comfort I have in looking at this every day, and certainly on Sundays. That's why we started these, was because we love print in general. We subscribe to multiple magazines. Doesn't mean we read all of this, but we get it. And there's nothing better than print in order to convey a lot of the things that we want to consume. There's a place for digital, and the Times, I saw, added 1 million subscribers in just 2019. And to see how all of this shakes out and what happens either in a post-Trump period starting this fall or post-Trump period 4 years from now, it's going to be fascinating. So you get to pick where we go next from after we finish the reading a little bit of the front section. We already saw the front page, but we're going to come in and just look at this. But after that, you get to pick which of those other sections we go to. A hidey hole with sea views and 2 golf courses. This is in Spain, a place called La Zagaleta. Egyptian court clears Mubarak's son in bank case. Life on an island being devoured by the rising sea in the Philippines. This is part of your triple bottom line that you're talking about, right? Like companies are causing some portion of this is being caused by companies. So do you believe that companies can help solve some of these issues?
Absolutely. I definitely think, and that was one of the things that I think this, that the New York Times does really well as well, is that you share such a broad perspective and you give people the opportunity to have a pause and I think shift their gut response to something when you read something at first bit and then you read a little bit deeper and it always changes your mind. To answer your question, yes, I absolutely do. I think especially that last story that you just referenced about the Philippines, that is directly related to climate. And we're not in a time of climate change. We are literally in a time, if Antarctica right now is San Diego and is 62 or 69 degrees, that is crazy and wrong and scary. And so we really need to start doing some exponential shifts on how we're consuming energy and fuel choices, et cetera, and carbon footprint, and trying to get down to net zero submissions. I know that BP just recently talked about this. And I think that's the piece in terms of, marrying that with shifting perspectives. There's been a lot of, oh my gosh, are they really going to do it this time? I think it's up to us as the consumers to make sure that they do. And this is a piece where we can all make some impact in terms of, and I know we're going to be appearing down at South by Southwest with them, what's going to be called the Net Zero Dome. Really excited about that. Coming up that first weekend. Yeah.
Very cool. Oh, by the way, I'm just going to mention it here. I was hoping to be at South by, but Prep for Social Media Weekend on March 2021 is consumed me. So I'm not able to go. Anybody wants a discounted platinum badge, ping me. It's now a $1,700 thing, and I'll give it to you at a much, much cheaper rate. So if you know anybody who still wants a badge for South by Southwest in March in Austin, folks, please ping me. Look at a headline or a sentence you wouldn't have thought of 40 years ago. Our fur departments are closing, right? So this shows that businesses can change with consumer taste, and as the planet changes, fashion even can cause things to change.
And these are some of the areas that we talk a lot about at our through SOCAP, which happens, October 20th through 23rd this year. And it's really what we call our Big 10 event, where you were just talking about, the intentional. So we have an intentionality funnel where we, talk about the converted, the curious, and the agnostic. And this is an event where all come to learn and discuss these big problematic areas. So.
Oh, fantastic. What does SOCAP stand for, and where is it?
It's it's social capital. Initially, it was social capital markets, but that's way too blah, 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 blah. So we shifted it down to SOCAP. It happens in San Francisco at Fort Mason, October 20th through the 23rd, and then we're going to do something for the women, and that is we're going to be doing our When Women Lead, which is specifically talking and powering up female investors as they're going to become, and along with the younger next generation are going to be handing over and handling a lot of the wealth in the future. So trying to get them comfortable and building a cohort and a community for them.
Fantastic. And now look at this story. Tension for Wall Street Journal in China and in the newsroom. This was 50 reporters and editors signed a letter criticizing the newspaper's handling of an opinion headline. So 3 journalists were kicked out of China who are on the news staff, separate from the business side, the opinion side, and for this headline calling China the real sick man of Asia. I'd also want to say that we have some great comments coming in, and maybe we can pull some of those up. Ann Kirshner, former read-along guest, says, I loved the industry standards, hashtag the old days. And it was great to back in the day. And she loved industry standard. And we've also had some great other comments. A question from Stephanie Du. Is it easier to sell this idea now that it's been proven that these companies perform better? And you still have people, skeptics, saying, well, these companies, the data is not long-term enough, et cetera?
Yes, absolutely. So point one, it is, because I think with actions such as the Business Roundtable signing and realizing, why? We have to go back to what we originally said we were going to do 40 years ago, right? So the world is catching up, and a lot of that is being driven by that next generation wealth, the millennials, the Gen Zs, and frankly, and also women. So yes, as the world catches up, we need to make sure that we stay out ahead of the conversation as well. So that's why we're also focusing a lot on how people can get involved. With regards to the metrics piece, that's the piece that the entire community is really looking at. How do we define, reminds me, dating myself, I can remember when the Internet Audit Bureau was started, and we all got together. I still remember being in those meetings. It was all the big publishing houses and all the big, advertising agencies. We all got together under one roof and said, okay, here are the standards with which we are going to hold ourselves accountable. And it's almost as though we need to do that, I think, now, because to your point, how can we make sure in their eyes, they may be saying that they are being true and they're doing it. But, this is not a one and done thing. And I think there's been a lot of greenwashing, which has hurt the viability and the reliability and created a lot of skeptics. So now I think it's on all of us, and that whole notion of shareholder advocacy, where we can start calling out, hey, I don't believe in what you're doing, and I don't like what you're doing. And that'll impact.
That's so important. Please keep the questions coming in. Steve DeRive on Twitter, Steve Taylor on Twitter, at Steve DeRive on Twitter, is on LinkedIn for us and manning our feed, and he is highlighting any questions that come in on LinkedIn. We also have Facebook comments, so please let us know as the questions come in, and tell us also what you're doing. How's your Sunday going? Where are you in the world? I know Kate would love to hear all the different countries and cities where people are watching us from, which is really cool. We already have Poland, we have India, we have the US, we have other places as well. And a big shout out to our production team of Neil at Neil Parekh, Paula at Big Green Pen, and Steve at Steve DeRive. As Trump heads to India, vacancies abound in towers with his name. This is about some issues that the India's economy is sagging, so apartment projects nationwide have suffered. So this is not a Trump issue. In fact, Trump may be much more popular in parts of India and among some people in India than in the United States. And it's going to be a love fest between him and Prime Minister Modi when they're out there. I think the visit is happening at the moment.
So, Sree, how do you feel about that?
Well, this is camera. This is a longer conversation for another time, but I would say that it's fascinating to see how
Right.
this evolves. I'll actually just show you here. My dad has, who's watching from India, has actually written a book about Modi's foreign policy, and it's called. Let's see here. I'm not sure if these things are flipped around when they come, but oh, there you go. It's good. So it's called Mode Diplomacy, and through a Shakespearean prism. My dad was a Shakespeare scholar from a tiny village in India with no electricity or indoor plumbing. He became a Shakespeare scholar and then an ambassador. Then a diplomat and an ambassador. And his cover is this photo of Modi and Trump together in Houston, and them holding hands. And the story of how this unique relationship is driving a lot of what's happening in that part of the world and elsewhere. And the foreword to this appropriately is written by Pranay Gupte, who was the first Indian American to work for the New York Times, and he has written a foreword to this book. So we'll talk, I'm sure, more about this book in the future. But it's fascinating conversations, just as people across generations are talking about politics in different ways now. We're seeing that happen in the Indian community as well.
That's exciting.
And let's see a few launches. That international rape case. It's actually there's a full double truck, as they call it, inside the New York Times. Look at this. It started on the front page, and then it goes for another page here. So 3 pages dedicated to this. For exiled Egyptian Jews, a homecoming and an unlikely welcome. And of course, the history of Jews in Egypt is well known and goes back centuries. And seeing this story, I'm going to look forward to reading that. Please jump in if you've read any of these or you have any opinions on any of these. Argentine President Boy's effort to legalize abortion, which in a Catholic country, I'm sure that's a question. In LA, Kobe dominates the paint.
Yeah.
For non-sports people, that's a reference to the paint is where they have the inside of near the basket is called in the paint. And so he is in fact now alive in different kinds of paint and graffiti and murals all over. Are you a sports fan?
I am. I don't mean to sound so tentative. I am.
Okay, good. So what are your teams? Give a shout out to your teams.
Well, okay. So being from
in any sport.
Yes, no, got it. Being from San Francisco and the Bay Area, the Warriors I love the Warriors. I like basketball, and I will have to also tell you that I frankly prefer college sports. I think I don't know why. I love the fact that people are just playing for the win of the game and maybe potentially to get picked up. And then I would say both Oakland A's and the Giants. I am married to an avid Yankees fan.
Oh,
so I know. So I've come to love. I know them all. In fact, we will be taking our family up to Cooperstown this year. Derek Jeter, family fave, is going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. So we're excited, really excited. And then I'm a long time, I used to play soccer since I was 6. I can't now because I blew a knee. But I still I love to see how women's soccer is really stepping up. And I know we're lucky going to Cooperstown, but I'm really excited to see how a lot of women's sports are really kind of coming to play. I did want to point out with Kobe, he demonstrates, and it's just what a loss and what a shame, especially at this point in his life, because he was just stepping out and he was starting to be so frankly, an impact entrepreneur. And he was demonstrating change and getting involved in both the community and broader based, as a number of sports figures are doing, which is really exciting to see. I think, there historically has been some when they get out, they will do other forms of business, but many of them now are really doing the great work with the impact. 1619, fabulous project.
And we have the ad, which I loved last week. We're going to just show that again because it's we want more people to understand the value of this project. And we also had Sunny Slaughter reading with us on the read along when the project came out. And I'd love to revisit this, Neil. Here we go.
In August 1619, a ship appeared on this horizon near Point Comfort, Virginia. It carried more than 20 enslaved Africans who were sold to the colonists. No aspect of the country we know today has been untouched by the slavery that followed. America was not America, but this was the moment it began.
Yeah, I'm so impressed with this, and it's such an important conversation. It's one of the reasons why actually the Kellogg Foundation came to us and said, SOCAP, we've got to start giving more people access to both, you know, the microphone, but also funding and business and support them in general. And so that's why we started our Spectrum event, which is going to be coming up actually out in Atlanta on the 10th and 11th of June this year. And I can't emphasize enough how important this is. I don't know if anyone on the line has gone to the African American History Museum in DC.
It's unbelievable. Yeah.
Oh, it's fantastic. And the range, again, and the experiential, the use of the audio and such, all the way up to, you know, modern day. If you haven't, I sincerely suggest that you do. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, I highly recommend it as well. Warren Buffett's annual letter. I don't know if you've had a chance to read the letter yet. He says too few women serve on boards. And he also says directors are often captive to the management teams that they are meant to supervise, particularly when it comes to acquisitions that chief executives want to make. Don't ask the barber whether you need a haircut. Great line.
Yeah, that is absolutely a great line. And, you know, the piece about the more women on boards, it is shown that I think the performance is 37% greater for those companies that have diverse boards, women on boards.
Yeah.
And there's a whole scientific reason why that happens. But
absolutely,
it's a really important thing. And I wrote an article about that.
So for those of you wondering about Nevada, and you know, you're just getting up in the morning and seeing the headlines that Sanders won Nevada, here's the impact of what has happened in Nevada. In 2016, the two people who won Nevada were the nominees. 2012, they were the nominees. In 2008, Romney was the nominee, but Hillary Clinton was not. In 2004, the nominees came out of Nevada, and in 2000. So in the last 5 elections, all but one of the contest had both nominees come out of Nevada. So that's why this is, when we talk about momentum, this is what we're talking about. 3 types of people who show up for democracy in America: proselytizers, skeptics, and the bewildered. I like that as well. Those are a great line. But the problem I see is the apathetic, the people who just stay home, who don't care, who think everything's the same. There's no difference. If you remember, there were people who were arguing there's no difference between Al Gore and George W. Bush in 2000, and that it wouldn't matter. And as the planet and Iraq and other people have learned, it matters, that there is a difference when you talk about these things, and it's important to focus on that. Here we're looking at, here's the powerful weapon can help women break the corporate glass ceiling. And this story by Kate. What is that powerful weapon? Tell us, Kate.
What I said was actually women supporting women, frankly.
Nice.
And through a number I used the word grace. And I essentially talked about how, you know, generosity of your network, being, you know, reliable, having one another's back, access, giving people access. I know later on we'll talk a little bit about this in your future of work issue, but this whole notion of mentorship, I'm going to take it up a notch and say it's actually sponsorship, which is slightly different, because it's actually what you are doing is opening doors and utilizing your political capital to give somebody access to an opportunity they wouldn't have had. C is for commitments, and really making sure that you're going to see it through, that you're walking the talk, and then equity and education. So if you see someone who has high potential, or I'm going to say this, there are a lot of folks who are the introverts in the group. They often are stepped over or just walked away because they aren't speaking. They have amazing minds. And I think just encouraging them and educating them on how there are other ways and avenues through which they can share their insights more comfortably. And I think many on the line who are women would agree. I know there's been a lot of talk about, male bashing, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to tell you, I think we women are even worse to each other. And so I think we need to really help each other and be the shoulders upon which this next generation stands, so that we can move forward and we can have Emily on a board.
Yes, and absolutely. I can't emphasize this enough. My wife, Rupa, who is a business coach and a strategist and head of strategy at a company called Harman. They make the JBL audio products and much, much more. She talks about the importance of women investing and supporting other women. While we're talking, I'm reading this story about Charles Hobson, producer who helped break TV's color line, is dead at 83. He was an Emmy Award-winning producer who helped shatter racial stereotypes of delivering a Black perspective that had long been missing in early television programming. He died in the Bronx in February. And here there's also a line where he says, this was a way for Blacks to hear their voices. Here's a community about 400,000 people at the time with all of their culture and churches and no coverage. He did a series called Inside Bed-Stuy or Inside Bedford-Stuyvesant, which was landmark. And here's a paid notice for Marge Doucet, actress and grande dame of life, died peacefully of natural causes on January 28th at her home in Manhattan. She was known for her sharp wit, sophistication, and beauty. Had a long career in the public eye, began with modeling in her native Kansas. So sometimes when you don't get the bigger obit, or even if you do, sometimes people like to put their own obits in, and then they have these in memoriam sections. It still means a lot to people to be here. Toby Tobias, 81, longtime dance critic, who was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize in 2012, an influential voice and an author of children's books. And Jose Zalaquet, a Chilean lawyer who helped restore order, is dead, a leader who was jailed and exiled and still sought justice. And this is, again, I always feel that we don't teach enough history, or we don't talk enough about history. People today forget how horrible the situation was in Chile in the 60s and 70s, and how things changed in 81 when democracy was restored there.
We actually experienced something along those lines in the impact space, where there's an organization, GSG, that holds an annual conference, one of the most popular, I was going to say global event. And because of all the instability, they needed to move it to Argentina. But it keeps repeating itself, that history.
Yes, it does. Laura Silverman, who's been a guest on our show, wonderful friend from the Philly area, says she received a new hires announcement from a local design tech firm. All five hires were white men. If it was a law firm, maybe they don't know enough people. They're doing things like that. I see several law firms who announce theirs, and it's always white men. But now you have a design firm. There's so many people, creative people in the Philly area who could easily have been hired. But one of the things I learned is that when people say there's a pipeline issue and all of that, at the Met, I was very proud. We hired the very first African-American woman in our department, in our 70-person department. We hired the first Hispanic man in our department. We hired the first African-American man in our department. So you have to, as the hiring lead, you can make that happen. Doesn't mean that you overlook qualified white folks or white men or anything like that, but you can be intentional on this. And I'm glad you focus on it.
We're actually going through this right now ourselves. And I think one of the reasons why a lot of companies kind of peter out is they say, oh my gosh, it's the speed with which we need to hire. I spent some time with the folks over at Microsoft Ventures, and we were I was talking to them exactly about this, diversity and inclusion and uncovering unconscious bias. And one of the young entrepreneurs said to me, Kate, I would love to do that, but finding some female engineers, the time it takes and the speed with which my investor expects me to turn around and hit that hockey stick that we were talking about earlier, it's near impossible. So I think that is something we have to change. We have to change that narrative. And then we just have to say, you know what, we're going to take the time because it's really important.
And I'll make the offer here to anyone who's watching. You want to hire female engineers? Let us know. We will help you find them because there are lots of them. They're very good. And ping me, Sree at Sree.net, or you want to hire other folks of color, please let us know. One of the points that Laura makes is that white men need jobs too. Absolutely.
Yes,
but the message
of course.
that announcement says is that if you're not white or male, we don't want you here. And that's the problem. And Laura hits it. We had another comment coming in from LinkedIn. Let's take a look at that comment. What's the best way to hold companies accountable to uphold their sustainability promises? Very big issue that people talk a good talk, but how do we make sure they walk it?
That is one of the things that we at Intentional, and especially at SOCAP, because we have such a preeminent voice in the arena and working with other partners in this space, are going to be working on, is coming up with what are those measurements, and then frankly being really rigorous ourselves and saying and coming up with a mutually agreed upon definition and a range. And then, frankly, making sure that we follow up and then that we share both the learnings, as in mistakes and missteps, as well as the successes. So, and then, frankly, really the best way is on your own individual level, don't buy their products until I've had many conversations with people about this, is there's somebody else who's doing a better job from a more sustainable standpoint, go with them. Which may mean there might be a slight premium short term, but I think that'll be one of the best ways that we can really, really drive complete change and impact.
That's very, very good and important points. Paula says, I'm curious about Kate's take on the California law that requires boards to have at least one woman. And you see so many boards with law or no law that are still having that issue. Before she answers that, I'm just going to flip the camera and just reintroduce our guest. If you're watching, if you just joined us on Facebook or LinkedIn, or you're watching later on Facebook or LinkedIn or on YouTube, I'm Sree Srinivasan. I'm a social and digital media consultant in New York City. And every Sunday, we read the Sunday New York Times out loud on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and YouTube. And it's one of the highlights of my week. This is my 5th year doing this. I'm joined by Neil Parekh and Steve Taylor and Paula Kiger. And it takes an army to produce this kind of show. And we love doing it. And we've been doing it for no reason except the love of the show. But we are now taking sponsors, and we're going to unveil later one of our first sponsorship deals. But if you are watching right now, you know that we have a community of thousands of people around the world who spend part of their Sunday watching this show. We have fantastic guests. You see Kate Byrne right there, who will continue our conversation of looking at the New York Times. But we have, only some time together, but we love doing this. And it means so much for us that we have such a great community of folks supporting us from around the world. So if you have anything that you want to promote, it could be a book launch, could be a conference, a movie, anything, we're happy to work with you. We've put together some very inexpensive packages and a way to connect with our very savvy, very smart audience of people from around the world. And please take a note of Social Media Weekend, which is coming up in March 21st in New York, and with some optional fun museum and other things on the 20th, including a fabulous party at Muckrack, one of the sponsors of Social Media Weekend. We like to say it's a one-day conference that will up your game and give you connections for life. So join us. Our tickets are very inexpensive, $149. They go up tomorrow to $199. So if you know anybody who could benefit, including high school students, tickets are just $99 for them. Please go on to smwknd.com or look at the links that are on the screen, or just go to the top of my Twitter page. It is pinned there. And we have the fabulous Nick Kristoff and Cheryl Wu Dunn speaking at the conference. There are closing headliners, and we have more headliners we'll be announcing. And I will say to Kate, who does programming of conferences and knows this, that you have to be intentional when you are programming your conference. Is it easier to just get the most famous person? No, but you shouldn't always be aiming for fame. You should be aiming for quality and inclusion of people who are there. And one of the most meaningful conversations we've had in the history of Social Media Weekend, which we've been doing since 2011, is when we had April Rain there from Oscar So White, talking about so many aspects of the crisis that's happening in the world of culture, and especially movies. It isn't that there aren't great movies. Obviously, there are very diverse, there are very important movies happening, but there is a bias, and it shows. And by the way, we saw it even in President Trump critiquing Parasite. She says, "Oh, it should be, well, why aren't we having great movies like Gone with the Wind?"
Oh, there's just so much there that I won't even start. It just like,
yeah. By the way, just want to say our friend Ron Thomas, who lives in Dubai but watches us every week in a different country, has given away the surprise. He says he's coming on board as a sponsor in the second quarter. We're so happy to have you, Ron. Thank you for supporting us. You are a great example of someone who, by the way, also took a chance. And I will say this, Ron happens to be a person of color, that we as people of color also have to take a chance and go out there and be out there and promote the work we're doing. Women as well, women of color and white women, we have to promote what we're doing and be there in front of audiences so that people know what we can do. And certainly Ron has shown that.
absolutely. I can't agree more. It's one of the things that we really spend a lot of time on when we're putting together our programming, because if we don't have programs that frankly, hopefully reflect the world, the audience, then nothing's going to change. And I will say that in the impact space, it started off, it was a privilege, right? It was a white privilege, started as that. We can't have that as we move beyond the converted circle and we get into the curious and the rest of the world catches up. There was a piece actually in the business section that was talking about Morgan Stanley and how they're buying E-Trade, and how a number of other kind of traditional companies, if you will, are starting to look to the sort of more mid to lower level investor as a potential client, and really in terms of even an impact investing, and how can they start supporting it. The phrase is where Wall Street meets Main Street. And it too, it's as soon as we all can start to learn how to make smart choices with our money, the better off it will only have positive reflections.
Great. Carla Baranakis, former copy chief of the New York Times, says in the 90s, the Association of Women in Sports Media kept hearing that sports editors couldn't find qualified women. So AWSM started holding a job fair at its annual convention. So that's where you don't want to give people an excuse. And that's why you have to be visible. You have to be shown. South Asian Journalists Association, an organization that I helped found 25 years ago, has done just that. That we speak up and we show that we're here and that we can help you solve the issues that you're trying to solve. We've got great qualified candidates. That's what we're talking about here. And all we ask is a chance, just be in there and have the interviews. You mentioned the business section a couple of times. So let's look at it. How the king of manuscripts became the Madoff of France. Accused of operating a Ponzi scheme, Gerard Letier prepares his defense as his collection is sold off. So I guess there's money in old manuscripts. So crisis in the world of manuscripts. She uses straight razors and private jets. This is the Like a Boss column. Jane Matthews, co-owner of EDO. With a cult following on Instagram, the coveted hairstylist Jane Matthews gives $325 haircuts at her shops to eclectic clientele when not pursuing other opportunities. So I've never heard of this person, but certainly she's doing, if she's flying private jet, she's doing fine. Her clients are usually between the ages of 28 and 45. It is usually the girl who likes her expensive stuff worn in. She's understated, but not messy. She doesn't have a lot of plastic surgery. She's a farm-to-table girl who doesn't shop at department stores, and this is how she spends her week. I don't know if you're familiar with this person, but she's EDO is the name of her brand.
And I thought that was a really interesting story that dovetails really nicely with, there's the specific section is escaping me. It might be Sunday Review, but with how people are utilizing social media. There was a big piece on the interior decorator who utilized Instagram. And it reminds me of how we used to say, okay, using technology is going to level the playing field. Well, really now social media is doing that. And it's to your earlier point, Sree, about getting the voices that we don't usually hear lifted and elevated so that people have access and become aware of the new business models too.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, here's fun things the New York Times does. The price of 46 random liquids by the gallon just because. And I've not seen this. What you don't know, Kate, is I come to the Times on the read along completely cold. So I'm experiencing it with our readers. So I've not seen this. But one of the things I always say, or I've heard, is that the cost of printer ink is more than Chanel No. 5. And we'll see if that's true. I don't know if they cover it here. But whole milk is $3.46, soy milk is $7.98, and oat milk is $10. And oat milk is very popular, or getting more and more popular. Camel's milk is $144 a gallon, and breast milk is $128 a gallon. For those of you watching overseas, that's about 4 liters makes a gallon. KY liquid lube is $2.49. A mouthwash is $20. Spanish Fly, I don't know if that's still a thing, is $6,000. Oh, here's Chanel. Okay, Chanel is $7,400 a gallon. Clean urine for, I guess, drug tests is $3,000.
Wow.
We're not going to go through all of this, but human blood is $3,000 a gallon. So it's Chanel No. 5 is more expensive than human blood. Fake blood's only $39 a gallon. Sperm is $112,000, and bull sperm is $560. Shampoo is $23, and Kiehl's dog shampoo is $189. Oh my God, look at that.
Good
Cat
Lord.
shampoo is $70. Horse shampoo is $17. So much fun here. Dom Perignon's only $2,000 a gallon. Chanel is $749.
Wow.
And bottled water is $1.29. Holy water is $37. Gasoline $2.54 in the state of New York on February 20th. And printer ink $5,000. So not quite as expensive as Chanel at $7,400, but certainly very, very, very expensive. Yeah, and tattoo ink is only $1,900. I wonder if you can just pour tattoo ink into
printer ink.
or look at this, liquid eyeliner is $176,000 per gallon. What a fun thing. Again, this kind of work costs money, right? And that's why we subscribe and we celebrate print here as we see. And Jemima's original maple syrup is $10 a gallon, and honey, raw and unfiltered, is $63 a gallon. Vermont maple syrup is $239. Here's more about the Madoff of France. And a Medicare plan favors private insurers, critics say. And look at these job listings still in print in the New York Times. People still do that. Yeah. And look at this, a conference about women in restaurants, the restaurant industry's female leaders. How cool is this? This is one of the things that, we used to always say. Even I was struck by seeing the female CEO of hair salon business, right, in EDO, is really cool, because there's some fields, and maybe you have some thoughts on this, Kate. There's some fields that at home are associated with women, such as cooking and cutting hair, the lowest end, but all the famous chefs and all the famous hairstylists often are men. How the heck did that happen?
I think it was, and right now what's happening, we're seeing the same sort of bias that's being created with AI and robots, right? There's that instant kind of profile. Oh, if a woman is standing at a sink, she's washing dishes, as opposed to scrubbing and getting ready to perform an operation. And I think, honestly, I think early days, it still goes back that men were more comfortable promoting themselves. Frankly, that was a large piece that got to the start of that. I wanted to just jump for a quick second. There's two in particular. The New York Times Magazine.
Let's do that. We only have about 15 minutes left.
I know. This has been fun. I'm sorry I've been so chatty.
And we also want to get to Anand Giridharas's cover story
yes.
In the Sunday Review. So I know you care about this. So why don't, if you'll just hold on for 1 second, we'll just quickly run through the rest so that we can come back to that and spend a little more time there.
Sure.
The cover of the book review is Orlando Patterson reviewing two books, The Affirmative Action Puzzle, A Living History from Reconstruction to Today by Melvin Urofsky, and Supreme Inequality, the Supreme Court's 50-year battle for a more unjust America instead of more just America. And you may have read that Justice Sotomayor called out the conservatives on the court, the 5 members of the conservative court, for basically just siding with with President Trump on everything. Very unusual, very blunt way for her to talk in the dissent. So that's fascinating. The cover of the Times Tea brand, the Times Style magazine. Look how thick that is.
It's huge.
Right?
That is like all day.
Oh yeah,
right.
all week, and it's an issue on women's fashion.
Yeah.
So some of you will want to grab that. We also have this wonderful kids.
I was going to say that too.
Times.
Fabulous.
The science behind Baby Yoda's cuteness. And Neil, we've talked about getting the team that puts together this, including Caitlin Roper and others from the New York Times, to do a read along, because and we should have some kids with us as we read the paper. Look how great this is. So if you have young kids in your life, please
Sree,
have them.
That last piece
section. Sorry, please.
Sorry for interrupting, but the piece that you just turned through, where it's what should I be? I love that. Right? It's very important, because I think what I even tell my daughters who are 25 and 21, who are, what am I going to end up doing? Blah, blah, blah. It doesn't even exist yet. A lot of the, right, what they're going to potentially be stepping into is so different. So I really appreciated the way the Times planted the seed to get the conversations going, and thinking, what could that look like? So really well done.
And it's also important to have diverse careers there also, right?
Absolutely.
We shouldn't just say everybody needs to be an engineer. It's in there. It talks about social worker and all kinds of things in there. Doctors, we need every kind of person. And then look at this, the devastating story in Australia, the royal exit. Kabuki takes on anime and manga. I was born in Tokyo, so I pay attention to stories about Japan, and an ad for the New York Times Kids section in there. The Sunday Styles cover is Visions of Cody Star Edition. What is Kanye West doing in Wyoming? And the Agriculture Queens. Louisiana residents are holding to a pageant tradition that is under siege by climate change. And we love kind of looking at the special section of the New York Times, the style section. They printed on special paper.
So can I make one little plug on that?
Please.
My guilty pleasure that has been forever and ever and ever is Modern Love. And actually also John and I were announced in the New York Times when we got married. And in fact, it was how BusinessWeek found out that John was moving to California. Oops.
What year was that?
That was 2009.
Nice. Very cool. Very
so
cool.
Yeah.
This Modern Love is firefighter chases woman down street.
It's a terrific story, and it's actually about, as I was talking about, shifting perspectives. This is one of the most elegantly written that I've read in this section, but it's talking about how a woman of color had all these preconceived notions about this middle-aged firefighter. They ended up having these terrific discussions. Sadly, they don't end up together. He passes. But also, my daughter, Liza Rodler, thank you very much for pulling that up.
Nice.
Yes. So my daughter, Liza, had gone through a relationship change, and she was figuring out, she wanted to share and talk about it. She's a very gifted writer. And so
this is her Modern Love column.
Yes, on a whim.
Yes.
When is being together worth $5.50 an hour? And it's because it's talking about, she's an econ major, education minor, and it's talking about, when you're staying, do you stay that extra hour? Anyway, you'll have to read the piece. But
Yes,
she did
of
this
course.
on a whim and thought, oh my gosh, wouldn't this be cool? And it got published. And I will tell you, she talks about mobile parking, Park Mobile, excuse me, which is a parking app. They got so much traffic from Liza's piece, which is a testament both to Liza but to you, and the New York Times reach, that they actually gave her own hashtag. And I said, great, a hashtag. They should give you free parking for life. But
Right.
it was really amazing. And since then, people have actually written to her and talked with her about their own relationship issues. And there are a number of people she got to present at a conference down in New Orleans. And people came up and said, I loved your column. So a lot of fans there.
That's awesome. And that's the modern love and this arts and leisure. Ben Affleck tried to drink away the pain. Now he's trying honesty. And I believe he talks about the biggest regret in his life is his ending his relationship and marriage to Jennifer Garner. And we have the real estate section that we won't get a chance to look at, and the Phantom of 9th Street, which is the metropolitan section, which is in print only in the New York City area. So we have about 10 minutes to cover.
Sorry.
Two segments that will take us 2 hours each. So
no, I'm sorry.
Let's go. Yeah.
Really quickly, the real estate, there is a piece about expats and about how a number of people, as they are turning in their late 40s and 50s and reinventing their lives, and actually then starting businesses and utilizing technology and mobility. I suggest everyone read that. I found it really interesting.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. All right. So shall we go to the magazine?
Sure. And yes, perfect.
Yeah. So tell us, what did you see in here?
So the piece that I thought on page 26 was, I felt really interesting, The Young and the Restless. It's all about this notion about how now, for the first time, we now have 5 different generations. The boomers, the millennials, the Gen X, Gen Z, and who am I forgetting? Xers, boomers, Gen X, baby boomers. Anyway, and
they're
the
all
traditional
working at the same time, right?
They're all working at the same time. And so from a management standpoint, what the heck? How does that, how do you deal with that in terms of a culture? There's now a whole business that's been created about generational consulting, and then goes beyond about recruiting, but actually how to keep people. And I bring that up because of that notion of diversity is what gets people inside a company, and inclusion is what keeps them. You were thumbing through another fabulous piece that talks about the great Google revolt. And I think you were just talking about, in China, how a couple of folks were kicked out the door because they spoke their opinions. This is exactly what kind of this now employee activism that is beginning to happen within companies, that when people were speaking their mind and trying to get some, essentially groups of employees together to talk about and say, hey, wait a second, we're being misled on what we're doing, what our jobs are doing, and what our products are being used for. The 4 organizers were promptly shown the door. And talking about, about unions. There's a little piece too about how to get on a corporate board. My recommendation is for women is to look internationally. A lot of times they're much more open-minded. Also, if you are looking to get more women on boards, expand your title search to Chief Marketing Officer, Chief HR, Human Resources, because that presentation, and then also the communication, and then the hiring, the people are going to be very important as we move forward.
Absolutely. Pavan Dhingra, who's watching on LinkedIn, says, enlightened conversation across the sections of the Time Sunday edition. Thank you.
Oh.
So thanks so much, Kate. So
thank you.
How to find a mentor for many efforts in these areas.
This piece is crazy.
Yeah.
This is all about play for pay. And what that means is the esport, and this is, I think, another, we were just talking about education and kids. And it is amazing right now, not everybody moving forward is going to go to college. And a lot of them are going to go do this. They're going to become esport pros. And it's phenomenal, the kind of money that this group gets. And I worked at Future, which is a big gaming company, and I handle their tech portfolio. But it's astonishing. So that's where, a lot of kids are going to, this one player, my gosh, he got signed and he got $3 million and he is 19. It's phenomenal. Of course, Amazon got in it because they bought Twitch. And of course, YouTube with their influencers, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, we saw the YouTube money broken revenues broken out for the first time, right? $15 billion.
Crazy, Sree. That's crazy.
When her mother, and this is important, when her mother lost her job, Valkyrie was able to use her Twitch earnings to buy a house for her. So it's not just boys and not just men, but also women. Debbie Bernick says, great ideas for leading an intentional life. Oh. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you, Debbie, for watching from outside Washington. And Debbie leads a wonderful life, and she raised very strong next generation. Diana says, I believe we should look for a sponsor, not just a mentor. It is a big difference. I think you mentioned it already, but very quickly, the difference so that people understand.
A sponsor is someone who actually you use your own political capital, and you act as an advocate for somebody when they're not necessarily there, and you are literally helping move their career forward and them forward. Mentor is more, in my mind, like a coach who actually helps talk about what you want to do, etc. But a sponsor is someone who literally is your front person, who's going out there looking on the horizon, trying to figure out. This was another interesting piece, Sree. The last taboo, talking about salaries, does it make it more equitable? And if doing so, what does it do to employee morale? And there was a lot of conversation. This is was led by a women-founded group called The Riveter, which is a co-working space. And that's the question. So you can share what you're making, but then it's been also shown that a lot of people, once they realize how unfair it all's been, it is a little disheartening.
Yeah, and I will say that I worked in the nonprofit world most of my life, or all my life, really, until I became a social media consultant, digital consultant. Last is year 3 of that business. There's a moment where my salary at the Met, because it goes on the 990 form.
Yes.
So I was told that the good news, you've got good news and bad news. The good news is, you're in the 990 form, which means you're one of the top 10 earners at the Met. The bad news is that when you're walking around the cafe, now everybody knows your salary. And it tells you something about forcing the issue of equity and inclusion. And women, especially, by being in a role for 15 years of that loyalty, you live in a world of 3% raises.
Yes.
But if you go out and get a job offer and bring it back, then maybe the company will then give you more money. Why not just pay everybody better to begin with?
Exactly, especially in the nonprofit realm, especially there. And I will say, anyone who's got kids who are starting to interview for jobs, make sure they always go back and don't accept that first offer, because that first offer, whatever they say, to your point, it sets the barometer for the rest of their career. And it's very hard to make that jump.
Debbie says, thanks for your kind words, Sree. You've raised 2 wonderful Indo-American kids too. That's right. So we like to talk about the Hindus of my friends who have raised, or the Om Shalom Brigade, who have raised half Hindu, half Jewish kids. Our kids are fully Hindu, but I love saying any chance I get, Hindu and Om Shalom. So our last section, we just have a couple of minutes, is about the Sunday Review, and the number of O's in this is fabulous.
It is.
Because there's way too many O's for billion. But does the world belong to them or us? Anand Girdhar Das's very good book, Winners Take All.
It's a fabulous book.
And a very important book. And here, he's talking about the elections, but there's so much other stuff going on in here as well. And I haven't had a chance to read this yet. So do you have a top takeaway, or...
I do. I mean, I think he says it in his last line is, let's face it, you're unlikely to be connected to one of the billionaires, but you can choose whether to resign yourself to living in their country or to remind them that they live in yours. So it's right. It's the whole debate about, do we just give up, because it's now become this election from billionaire to billionaire.
Right.
And are we going to give that up? And that's why I think, it's really interesting. I think what Bernie did, he's been very smart. in a lot of ways. I'm still undecided, but I thought the way he handled reaching out this grassroots organization and the reaching out to the Latino market was incredibly smart. And I think it's one of those things where we can get more people to the table. But it's really, we don't want to give the company, and what Anand is saying is, we don't want to give our country over just to billionaires. You shouldn't be able to just buy your way to the top.
Right. By the way, just one note on Bernie and his rant against billionaires. Last election cycle, you may remember, it used to be millionaires and billionaires, and then he became a millionaire, and
then it wasn't cool. Exactly.
Yeah. So he doesn't go after millionaires anymore. You may have noticed.
Oh, let's pray we don't go to trillionaires, but yeah.
Why a black girl might want to shrink. I read the story online earlier. We have to live in a world that tells us our bodies are all wrong. Nonprofit hospitals are too profitable.
Yep.
Is another 14-year-olds who kill are not adults. Cripple the intelligence agencies, not smart. So like outrage everywhere. Can Sanders be stopped? Should he be stopped is another question. China's health failings distract from our own Nick Kristof, the fabulous Nick Kristof, huge fan. So
he did a great piece.
He and his wife, Cheryl Wudun, will be headlining the social media weekend, my flagship event coming up March 2021 in New York City, where prices go up from $149 to $200 tomorrow. So if you know anybody who's interested in digital, social, mobile, please ask them to check out the link to Social Media Weekend. It's on the top of my Twitter feed at all times, and would love to have you join us. Maureen Dowd writes about America's parasite, Donald Trump, I guess is the story there, and in search of the vanishing dark, something essential is lost when everything is illuminated. That's a beautiful line about partly intentionality and things like that. Debbie makes an important point. Not all billionaires are alike.
Sure.
False equivalence. Their values count. And our current president has no debts. As so many debts, he's not a billionaire.
True.
That's important as well. Even when I'm psychotic, I'm still me. A disability column. The author for the forthcoming The Terrible Unlikelihood of Our Being There and The Devil's Castle. This is Suzanne Anna Teta. So what a hour and a half we've had here, Kate. You've been amazing. We've had some comments that I'll read very quickly. We just sold a ticket right now, so other tickets are also selling. We appreciate it. Sudha Parekh, who's Neil's mom, says people working for nonprofit organizations get lots of job satisfaction, but limited salary. In the past, she has worked for an NGO. So that's also an important point. It'd be great if we had nonprofit folks paid better for really important work. Just as I guess lawyers who do legal aid society work, they are given time off from their or their debts are canceled, right? Like some law schools are doing that.
Right.
And it would be great if B schools also encourage folks to go into the nonprofit world. You can see how sunny it is out here. And as I look out into New Jersey and New York. Where do you folks live, Kate?
We live out in Marin County, so San Rafael, California, right in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Wonderful. What a beautiful part of the country, and that's fabulous. So we're going to hand over shortly to Neil so that he can take it away and talk about next week's fabulous guest as well. And by the way, we do this 52 weeks a year, so we need guests. So please tell your friends who if you would like to nominate somebody to be a guest, they can be anywhere in the world and join us, as long as they're willing to get up at 8:30 a.m. on a Sunday, the way that our friend Kate has done. So please join us. Diana watching, she says, "Thank you, Kate. I loved listening to you." Diana runs. By the way, big shout out to Diana. Always watches at 8:30 a.m., 5:30 a.m. Eastern in the San Mateo County area, near. She says she loves having Kate as a neighbor, and she's part of the San Mateo County health system. So a big shout out to her, to our friend Preston Merchant and others who are healthcare doing healthcare work at this time when there's so much fear every minute of what's about to happen in the coronavirus and other things. And lots of comments coming in online that I will read later. But Rose Horowitz says thank you to Kate, and Pramod says
Thank you.
excellent show today. Thank you very, very much, everybody, for watching. And over to Neil. Thank you, Neil.
Thank
Neil's
you.
joined us. There he is. Thank you there, Neil, for doing this. What a fabulous conversation we had. Thank you for producing it so well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sree. And with Prabodh's comment, PK Sharma, it's a great transition to talk about next week's guest. Next week's guest is going to be Dr. Akash Agarwal. Dr. Sharma's introduced us to him, and he is going to be on the guest. He is a gastroenterologist. But next month is Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month. So we wanted to raise some awareness about that and let people know. So here's just a little bit of a promo for next week. Sree again will be our host, and Dr. Akash Agarwal, a gastroenterologist, will be on the show. So we look forward. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this week. Kate, in particular, I want to thank you for joining us. And glad that you were in St. Louis this week, so that the time zone was
a little kinder.
A little bit better.
And one of the things we didn't get a chance to talk about, Kate, and definitely we'll follow up with you. My day job, this is definitely a passion project for me in terms of nights, evenings, weekends. But I work with United Way during the day in communications. So everything you were talking about in terms of working with corporate partners with purpose, and they're paying attention to not just the bottom line, but their employees. We work very closely with Kellogg as well. I think there's a lot that we can follow up with and
love to
talk after
absolutely, absolutely, would love to.
So with that, Sree, thank you very much again for a great read-along. Kate and everyone, quick shout out to Paula Kiger and Steve Taylor, our producers for the show. We couldn't do this without you. And all of our guests who have joined us for now our 5th year of the New York Times Read Along, which is incredible. Thank you. We wouldn't have a show if it wasn't for you. So with that, we'll bring it to a close. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Great seeing you and meeting you.
Bye.
Bye.